You think the world is manipulative, but what if the real manipulation is happening inside your own mind? Every man you call ruthless is just a mirror. Every person you think is using you, just a reflection of what you refuse to see in yourself. You've convinced yourself the problem is out there. It's not. The most dangerous characteristic of the ruthless mind isn't cruelty. It isn't coldness. It isn't even the capacity for manipulation. It's projection. The unconscious act of seeing your own denied ambition, your buried hunger for control, your exiled desire for power, and labeling it as theirs. You're not reading people. You're reading yourself. And that distortion is costing you everything. Respect, boundaries, dominance, clarity. This isn't about becoming a better person. This is about becoming a conscious one. Because until you see what you've been projecting, you'll keep creating enemies that don't exist and losing battles you started with yourself. Here's the paradox. The people you fear most are the ones who remind you of who you could be if you stopped lying to yourself. And the consequence of that lie, you stay weak, reactive, controlled by shadows you refuse to own. 9 principles, 1 shift. From unconscious projection to strategic command. Let's begin. 1. The case of Friedrich, the broken mirror. You look at the world and see enemies everywhere. Manipulation, disrespect, people using you, draining you, discarding you like you're nothing. You think the problem is out there, in them. But here's what you refuse to see. The enemy you fear most is the one you carry inside. Every person you label as ruthless is just a mirror reflecting the part of yourself you've buried. The part that wants power but pretends it doesn't. The part that craves control but hides behind fairness. You call them manipulative because you can't admit you'd do the same if you had the guts. That's the first symptom of weakness, not the world's cruelty, but your inability to own your own. I've watched this pattern destroy people. Friedrich wasn't his real name, but the story is real. He came to me convinced the world was rigged against him. Every colleague was a snake, every friend, a user, every woman, a manipulator. He had proof, he said, texts, conversations, behaviors, and he was right. They were manipulative. But so was he. The difference? They knew it, he didn't. His brain had taken every rejected ambition, every denied desire for dominance, and projected it outward. He became obsessed with spotting manipulation in others because he couldn't stomach the fact that he wanted to manipulate too. That's the psychology of the broken mirror. You see the world as a threat because you refuse to see yourself as one. When you deny your own ruthlessness, your mind doesn't just forget it, it weaponizes it. It turns your repressed ambition into paranoia. Your hidden desire for control becomes hypervigilance. You start reading manipulation into neutral interactions. A delayed text becomes disrespect. A forgotten favor becomes betrayal. You're not observing reality anymore. You're living inside a distorted projection of your own fear, and the more you deny it, the worse it gets. This isn't emotion, this is survival psychology. Your brain is trying to protect you from a threat that doesn't exist outside, only inside. But you'd rather believe the world is broken than admit you are. Here's the consequence most people never grasp. When you project your shadow onto others, you give them power over you. You become reactive, predictable, weak. They don't even need to manipulate you. You manipulate yourself. You see an enemy where there's only indifference. You feel disrespected when no one's even thinking about you. Every boundary you fail to set, every approval you chase, every time you sacrifice your needs to avoid conflict, all of it traces back to this one refusal. The refusal to see that the ruthlessness you fear in them is the ruthlessness you've exiled in yourself. And until you reclaim it, you'll keep losing. Not because the world is cruel, but because you've made yourself blind. Friedrich never recovered. Last I heard, he'd burned through another job, another relationship, another chance. He's still out there, scanning for threats that live only in his mind. Still convinced he's the victim, still too terrified to look in the mirror and see what's really staring back. That's the broken mirror. It doesn't crack from outside pressure. It shatters from the weight of what you refuse to see. And once it breaks, you spend the rest of your life cutting yourself on the shards, blaming everyone else for the blood. But the weapon was always yours. 2. The dark projection, the weapon of the weak mind. Denying your ambition is the first act of self-deception. You tell yourself you don't care about power, that you're above manipulation, that you value fairness over dominance. But your brain knows the truth. It knows you want control. It knows you crave respect. It knows you'd crush your enemies if you had the skill and the stomach for it. And because you won't admit it, your mind does something dangerous. It transforms that buried ambition into a threat. What you repress doesn't disappear, it mutates. It becomes the very thing you fear most in others. This is the dark projection, and it's the weapon the weak mind uses to destroy itself without ever realizing it's holding the blade. Your brain doesn't process denial the way you think it does. When you refuse to own a part of yourself, your desire for dominance, your capacity for ruthlessness, your need for control, the neural pathways don't just go dormant. They rewire. They attach that rejected trait to external stimuli. Suddenly, everyone around you becomes a carrier of what you deny in yourself. Your co-worker's confidence looks like arrogance. Your partner's independence feels like manipulation. Your friend's success triggers suspicion. You're not reading them accurately. You're projecting your own repressed psychology onto their behavior. And the more you deny it, the more distorted your perception becomes. This isn't emotional. This is neuropsychology. Your brain is trying to reconcile the gap between who you pretend to be and who you actually are. And it does so by making the world a villain. Here's where it gets darker. Once the projection solidifies, it becomes self-reinforcing. You see manipulation everywhere, so you act defensively. You withdraw, you attack preemptively. You sabotage connections before they can hurt you. And guess what happens? People respond to your hostility. They pull back. They stop trusting you. They treat you exactly the way you feared they would. But they're not confirming your suspicions. They're reacting to your behavior. You created the enemy you were so afraid of. This is the projection loop at its most vicious. Your fear manufactures the consequence, and then your mind uses that consequence as proof that the fear was justified. You're not surviving a hostile world. You're living inside a distorted reflection of your own denied self, and every day it gets harder to tell the difference. I watched this destroy someone close to me. She was brilliant, strategic, capable of reading people with surgical precision. But she'd been taught that ambition was ugly, that wanting power made you corrupt, that ruthlessness was a moral failing. So she buried it, and her brain, unable to reconcile her natural instincts with her imposed values, started projecting. Every colleague became a schemer, every friend a user, every man a predator. She couldn't see their actions for what they were. She could only see her own repressed desires reflected back at her. And because she refused to integrate that part of herself, she spent years fighting ghosts. The manipulation she feared wasn't in them. It was in her. Denied, repressed, and weaponized against her own perception of reality. The central theme here is this: the dangerous characteristic of the ruthless mind isn't ruthlessness itself, it's the denial of it. When you reject your own capacity for control, for strategy, for calculated emotion, you don't become moral. You become weak, and that weakness doesn't protect you. It blinds you. It turns your mind into a weapon aimed at yourself. The world becomes a battlefield, not because it is one, but because you've projected your inner war onto every interaction. And until you stop lying to yourself about what you are, you'll keep losing fights that were never real to begin with. But here's what most people miss. There's a way out, and it starts with something most people are too afraid to do. 3. The projection loop. Mental prison. The mind creates false realities that then become self-fulfilling. You project your fear onto someone. They sense your distrust. They react with distance, and you take that distance as proof they were never trustworthy. You didn't predict their behavior, you caused it. But your brain doesn't register that distinction. It only sees confirmation. This is the projection loop, and it's the most efficient mental prison ever designed. No walls, no bars, just an endless cycle of distorted perception feeding distorted reality. You think you're reading people. You're not. You're reading your own memories, your own wounds, your own buried shame. And every time you react to that projection, you tighten the lock on your own cage. Here's the psychology most people miss. You're not judging others based on what they do. You're judging them based on what you've done or what you fear you'd do in their position. Someone cancels plans and you assume disrespect. Why? Because you've cancelled plans when you didn't respect someone. A colleague takes credit for shared work and you feel betrayed. Why? Because you know you'd do the same if the stakes were high enough. You see manipulation in neutral actions because manipulation lives in you, denied and unintegrated. Your brain scans for threats that match your internal blueprint, and when it finds even a slight resemblance, it locks on. You're not reacting to the world, you're reacting to your own shadow playing out in real time on other people's faces. While you're projecting, you don't see the world. You see your fear repeated on a loop. Every conversation becomes a test. Every gesture, a hidden message. Every silence, a threat. You walk into rooms already defensive, already calculating who's against you, already preparing for betrayal that hasn't happened, and people feel it. They sense your suspicion, your guardedness, your cold assessment of their motives, so they pull back. They stop being warm, they stop being open. Not because they're manipulative, because you made it unsafe for them to be anything else. And then you take their withdrawal as proof. You say, "See, I knew they couldn't be trusted." But what you're really saying is, "I created the outcome I feared most, and now I get to feel right about my paranoia." That's the loop. And most people live in it their entire lives without ever realizing they built it themselves. I've seen this trap people who should have had everything: intelligence, opportunity, charm, but the loop got them first. One guy I knew, sharp as hell, could read a room better than anyone, but he couldn't stop projecting his own ambition onto everyone around him. He assumed every friendly gesture was strategy, every compliment was manipulation, every alliance was temporary. So he acted accordingly, cold, transactional, always 3 steps ahead of a betrayal that never came. And eventually people stopped trying. They stopped inviting him in. Not because he was wrong about human nature, because he made himself unbearable to be around. He died alone in that loop, convinced the world was exactly as ruthless as he'd always believed. But the ruthlessness was his, projected, denied, and reflected back until he couldn't see anything else. The projection loop deepens cognitive discomfort because it forces you to confront an uncomfortable truth. You're not a victim of the world's cruelty. You're a participant in your own isolation. Every time you choose suspicion over curiosity, every time you react to your projection instead of the person in front of you, you reinforce the prison. And here's the worst part. The loop doesn't just distort your perception of others. It distorts your perception of yourself. You start believing you're the only one who sees the truth, the only one who isn't naive, the only one smart enough to spot the game. But that's not clarity. That's arrogance born from fear. And the longer you stay in the loop, the harder it becomes to remember what reality looked like before you locked yourself inside. But if you want out, there's a method, and it starts not in the mind, but in the body. 4. The body method, the inner battlefield. The body reveals what the ego tries to hide. Your mind can lie to you for years, crafting narratives, justifying reactions, rewriting history to protect your self-image. But your body doesn't lie. It holds the truth in tension, in shallow breathing, in the tightness across your chest when someone challenges you. You feel it before you think it. That spike of adrenaline when you're about to be exposed. That cold contraction when someone gets too close to what you've buried. Most people ignore these signals. They push through the discomfort, rationalize it away, call it stress or anxiety. But those sensations aren't random, they're warning signs. Your body is telling you that you're projecting, that you're reacting to a threat that isn't external, it's internal. And if you learn to read it, you can catch the projection before it takes control. Tension, stiffness, acceleration. These are the physical markers of active projection. You're in a conversation, and suddenly, your shoulders lock. Your jaw clenches. Your breathing gets shallow and rapid. You're not responding to what the person said. You're responding to what you think they meant, what you fear they're implying, what your past taught you to expect. I've trained myself to notice this. When I feel that contraction, I don't react. I pause. I ask myself, am I reading this person, or am I reading my own fear? 9 times out of 10, it's the fear. The person in front of me is neutral, maybe even friendly. But my body remembered something. A past betrayal, a buried shame, a denied ambition, and it fired the alarm. That's not weakness, that's biology. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it's designed to do, protect you from perceived threats. But when the threat is a projection, protection becomes self-sabotage. Here's the method. When you feel that physical shift, tension, acceleration, the urge to attack or withdraw, stop. Don't speak. Don't react. Just observe. Where is the tension? Your chest, your throat, your hands. Focus on it. Breathe into it. And then ask yourself the only question that matters. Am I reading the other or running away from myself? This isn't therapy. This isn't emotional hand-holding. This is a tactical interrogation of your own nervous system. You're forcing your body to show you what your mind refuses to admit. And most of the time, what you'll find is this. The person in front of you isn't the enemy. The enemy is the part of you that sees enemies everywhere because it can't accept what it is. I used this method in a negotiation once. High stakes, zero room for error. The other side made a move that felt like manipulation. Delayed information, strategic ambiguity, calculated pressure. My body responded immediately. Heart rate spiked, jaw locked. Every instinct told me to counter hard, to assume the worst, to treat them like adversaries. But I paused. I felt the tension, and I asked myself, is this manipulation, or is this me projecting my own strategy onto them? Turned out, It was projection. They weren't playing games. They were stalling because they didn't have the answer yet. If I'd reacted from that projection, I would have burned the deal. Instead, I stayed cold, asked clarifying questions, and closed it clean. The body method saved me from my own mind, and it's saved me 100 times since. This introduces a practical method, and that increases retention because people can use it immediately. You're not just consuming theory, you're gaining a tool, and tools give you power. But here's what separates the ruthless mind from the weak one. The ruthless mind doesn't just use the body method to avoid projection, it uses it to weaponize clarity. When you can read your own nervous system, you can read others. You start noticing when they tense up, when they accelerate, when their body betrays the lie their mouth is telling. You see their projections before they do, and that gives you control. Not because you're manipulating them, because you're operating from reality while they're trapped in their own distorted reflection. But even this method has limits. And if you want to cut deeper, if you want to dismantle the projection at its root, you need something sharper. You need the blade of reason. 5. Self-questioning. The blade of reason. The relentless mind doubts before judging. It doesn't accept the first interpretation, doesn't trust the immediate emotional reaction, doesn't assume the story it tells itself is true. Most people think confidence means certainty. It doesn't. Real confidence is the willingness to interrogate your own perception until you're sure it's grounded in reality, not fear. Weak minds react. Strong minds question. And the ruthless mind questions ruthlessly. It doesn't care about protecting your ego or preserving your narrative. It cares about truth. And truth requires you to dismantle every assumption, every projection, every comfortable lie you've built to avoid seeing yourself clearly. This is the blade of reason, and it cuts deeper than anything else because it cuts inward first. 3 questions shatter the illusion. When you feel that spike of suspicion, that certainty someone's manipulating you, that conviction you're being disrespected, stop. Don't react. Ask yourself, where is the proof? Not the feeling, not the intuition, not the vibe or the energy or the pattern you think you recognize, the actual, observable, undeniable proof. Most of the time there isn't any. You have interpretation. You have assumption. You have a projection shaped by past wounds and denied desires. But proof, none. And when you can't find proof, you're not reading the situation, you're inventing it. That's the first cut. It exposes how much of your reality is constructed from fear, not fact. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Second question, what other readings are there? You've decided someone's being cold, dismissive, manipulative. Fine. But is that the only possible interpretation? Could they be distracted, overwhelmed, dealing with something you don't know about? Could their behavior have nothing to do with you at all? The weak mind locks onto one explanation and defends it to the death. The ruthless mind entertains multiple possibilities without attachment to any of them. It holds interpretations lightly, tests them against evidence, discards them when they don't hold up. This isn't indecision, it's precision. You're not weakening your judgment by considering alternatives. You're sharpening it. Because the truth is rarely the first story your brain tells you. It's usually the one you have to dig for, the one that doesn't flatter your fears or justify your defensiveness. Third question, and this one's the hardest. Have I done the same before? When you see manipulation in someone, ask yourself, have I manipulated? When you feel disrespected, ask, Have I disrespected others? When you sense someone's using you, ask, have I used people when it served me? This is where most people break, because the answer is always yes. You have manipulated, you have been cold, you have prioritized your needs over someone else's feelings. You've done exactly what you're accusing them of. And that doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you human. But it does mean you're projecting. You're seeing your own capacity for ruthlessness and labeling it as theirs. And until you own that, until you integrate it, you'll keep creating enemies out of mirrors. This question doesn't weaken you, it liberates you. Because once you admit you're capable of what you fear, you stop fearing it in others. I use these 3 questions daily. Someone cuts me off in traffic. Where's the proof they're an asshole? Maybe they didn't see me. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital. What other readings are there? Have I ever driven recklessly when I was desperate or distracted? Every time I ask, the projection dissolves, and what's left is clarity. Not naive trust, not cynical suspicion, just cold, accurate perception. That's the power of self-questioning. It doesn't make you soft, it makes you untouchable. Because people can only manipulate you if you're operating from projection. When you see clearly, when you've stripped away every layer of distorted interpretation, there's nothing left to exploit. You become immune not because you're guarded, because you're awake. And once you're awake, once you've used the blade to cut through every illusion, you're ready for the final step. You're ready to reclaim what you exiled. You're ready to integrate the shadow. 6. The reintegration of the shadow, the ritual of power. The shadow doesn't need to be healed. It needs to be used. You've spent years trying to bury it, deny it, pretend it doesn't exist. Your ambition, your hunger for control, your capacity for manipulation, your willingness to prioritize yourself over others. You've labeled all of it as darkness, as something corrupt that needs to be suppressed. But suppression doesn't eliminate power. It just makes it volatile. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's your weapon. And the only reason you fear it is because you've never learned to wield it with precision. The ruthless mind doesn't reject the shadow. It integrates it. It pulls every exiled part back into conscious control and uses it strategically, without guilt, without hesitation. This is the ritual of power, and it begins the moment you stop apologizing for what you are. Visualize the strategist that lives within you. Close your eyes. See him clearly. He's cold, patient, calculating. He doesn't react from emotion. He observes, assesses, and acts when the timing is perfect. He doesn't care about approval. He doesn't need validation. He knows what he wants, and he moves toward it without asking permission. He reads people not to harm them, but to understand them. He sets boundaries without explanation. He manipulates situations, not maliciously but efficiently, to create outcomes that serve his survival and his goals. That's not a villain. That's intelligence. That's the part of you that knows how to win, how to command respect, how to operate in a world that rewards power and punishes weakness. You exiled him because someone told you he was wrong. But he's not wrong. He's what you need to stop being a victim. He is not the villain. He is the intelligence you have exiled. Every time you felt the urge to say no and said yes instead, that was him trying to protect your boundaries. Every time you saw through someone's manipulation but stayed silent to keep the peace, that was him warning you of the threat. Every time you wanted something and pretended you didn't care, that was him trying to give you permission to pursue power without shame. You didn't listen. You called him selfish, ruthless, cold. You pushed him into the shadow and told yourself you were being moral. But what you really did was disarm yourself. You chose weakness over strength, approval over respect, comfort over dominance. And now, you're paying the price. You're tired, you're resentful, you're surrounded by people who take more than they give because you taught them they could. The shadow didn't make you weak, denying it did. I've done this ritual myself. There was a version of me I refused to be, the one who prioritized his goals over other people's feelings, who set boundaries without softening them, who used strategy instead of hoping fairness would prevail. I thought that version was cruel. Turns out he was just effective. So I stopped fighting him. I visualized him, acknowledged him, and made a deal. I'd let him operate, but with my values as the framework. He could be ruthless, but not reckless, strategic, but not short-sighted, manipulative when necessary, but only in service of survival and long-term power. And once I integrated him, everything changed. I stopped being walked over. I stopped resenting people for doing what I allowed. I stopped projecting my denied ambition onto others because I wasn't denying it anymore. The shadow became a tool, not a threat. And that's when I became untouchable. This is psychological transformation, from pain to mental mastery. You're not healing trauma here. You're weaponizing it. Every rejection, every betrayal, every moment you felt powerless, that's fuel. The shadow took all of it and turned it into strategic awareness. He knows how people operate because he's been hurt by how they operate. He doesn't trust blindly because trust has consequences. He doesn't give without reciprocity because generosity without boundaries is just self-destruction. When you integrate the shadow, you don't lose your humanity. You gain precision. You stop being controlled by emotion and start using emotion as data. You stop reacting and start orchestrating. You stop hoping people will respect you and start making it impossible for them not to. But integration alone isn't enough. Once you've reclaimed the shadow, you need to name it. Because what you don't name still controls you even from the inside. 7. To name is to possess. What you don't name controls you. It operates in the background, pulling strings you can't see, shaping decisions you think are yours. You feel the urge to dominate a conversation, but you don't call it what it is, so it leaks out as passive aggression. You want control over a situation, but you won't admit it, so you manipulate indirectly through guilt or withdrawal. You crave respect, but naming that feels too raw, too honest. So you chase approval instead and resent people when they don't give you what you actually wanted. The shadow doesn't lose power when you integrate it. It loses power when you name it. When you look at ambition and call it ambition. When you see manipulation and call it manipulation. When you feel the hunger for dominance and say it out loud, I want power. That's possession. That's control. That's the moment you stop being a passenger in your own psychology. Ambition, manipulation, strategy, neutral tools. They're not good or evil. They're not moral or immoral. They just are. A knife can cut food or cut flesh. The tool doesn't decide, the hand does. But you've been taught to treat these capacities like sins, like character flaws, like proof you're corrupt if you possess them. So you bury them, and buried tools rust. They become dangerous, unpredictable, impossible to control. But when you name them, when you pull them into the light and examine them without judgment, they become instruments. You can use ambition to build something meaningful or to destroy someone standing in your way. You can use manipulation to protect yourself or to exploit the weak. You can use strategy to create leverage or to burn bridges. The ruthless mind integrates them. The weak mind denies them and gets controlled by them anyway. I'll tell you what I named in myself. I named the part that enjoys watching people underestimate me, then proving them wrong. I named the satisfaction I feel when I outmaneuver someone who thought they were smarter. I named the cold calculation that kicks in when someone tries to guilt me into something I don't want to do. I used to be ashamed of those things. I thought they made me a bad person, but they don't. They make me effective. And once I named them, I could control when and how I used them. I stopped leaking manipulation through tone and body language. I stopped feeling guilty when I prioritized my goals over someone's comfort. I stopped pretending I didn't care about power when power is the only thing that protects you from being used. Naming didn't make me crueler, it made me clearer. And clarity is the foundation of dominance. The ruthless mind integrates them, the weak deny them. That's the distinction. Weak people tell themselves they're above ambition, beyond manipulation, too moral for strategy. And then they spend their lives confused about why nothing works, why people don't respect them, why they feel powerless despite doing everything right. They're powerless because they disarmed themselves. They denied the tools so they can't use them consciously, but the tools are still there, operating unconsciously, sabotaging every interaction. The ruthless mind doesn't have that problem. It knows what it is. It names every capacity, every desire, every dark impulse, and then it decides, strategically, coldly, when to deploy them. That's not moral weakness, that's tactical superiority. You don't become a monster when you name your shadow. You become unchained. Here's the truth. Most people can't handle. You already manipulate. You already seek control. You already prioritize your survival over fairness. You do it every day, in 1,000 small ways, and you lied to yourself about it to preserve the illusion that you're good. But good and effective are not the same thing. And if you keep choosing the illusion of goodness over the reality of power, you'll stay exactly where you are, resentful, overlooked, controlled by people who had the courage to name what you won't. The dangerous characteristic of the ruthless mind isn't that it names these things. It's that it refuses to. And once you finally name them, once you take possession of every exiled part, you unlock something most people never access. You gain the ability to see without distortion. And that's the final evolution, from projection to perception. 8. The new power. Strategic perception. Seeing without projecting is true strength. Most people think power comes from force, from aggression, from making people fear you. It doesn't. Real power comes from perception. The ability to see people as they actually are, not as your wounds tell you they are. When you stop projecting, when you've integrated and named every part of the shadow, something shifts. Your vision clears. You stop interpreting neutral behavior as threat. You stop reading strategy into every gesture. You stop assuming malice when there's only incompetence or indifference. And that clarity gives you an edge no amount of aggression ever could. Because whoever masters their interpretations masters people. Not through control, not through manipulation, through understanding so precise it feels like you can read minds. But you're not reading minds. You're just seeing reality without the filter of fear. Whoever masters their interpretations masters people. Think about that. Every interaction you've ever had, every conflict, every misunderstanding, it started with interpretation. Someone said something, you assigned meaning to it, and you reacted based on that meaning. But what if the meaning you assigned was wrong? What if their tone wasn't dismissive, it was exhausted? What if their silence wasn't rejection, it was contemplation? What if their coldness wasn't cruelty, it was boundary setting? You've been operating on distorted data your entire life, making decisions based on projections, creating consequences from interpretations that were never accurate. The ruthless mind doesn't do that. It sees multiple possibilities, tests them, discards the ones that don't fit. It doesn't lock onto the first interpretation. It waits, it observes, it withholds judgment until the pattern is undeniable. And that patience is what separates dominance from desperation. I learned this the hard way. There was a business partner I was convinced was undermining me. Every meeting I felt it. Subtle digs, strategic delays, information withheld. My projection told me he was positioning himself to cut me out. My body confirmed it. Tension, acceleration, the urge to strike first. But I'd trained myself to pause. So I used the blade of reason. Where's the proof? None. What other readings are there? Maybe he's overwhelmed. Maybe he's risk-averse and moving slow to protect us both. Have I done the same? Yes. I've withheld information when I wasn't ready to share it. I've delayed decisions when I needed more clarity. And once I stopped projecting, I saw the truth. He wasn't my enemy. He was cautious. And his caution saved us from a deal that would have collapsed 6 months later. If I'd reacted from projection, I would have destroyed the partnership. Instead, I saw clearly, adjusted my approach, and we both won. That's the power of strategic perception. It turns potential conflict into coordination. Clarity is the supreme power of the relentless mind, not strength, not ruthlessness, not even intelligence. Clarity. Because when you see clearly, you make better decisions. You waste less energy on false threats. You stop sabotaging relationships that could have served you. You stop creating enemies out of neutral parties. You stop exhausting yourself with vigilance against dangers that don't exist. And here's what people miss. Clarity doesn't just protect you, it weaponizes you. When you can see people without projection, you know exactly how to move them. You know what they fear, what they want, what they'll respond to. Not because you're manipulating them, but because you're operating from truth. And truth is always more effective than strategy built on distortion. The weak mind projects and loses. The ruthless mind perceives and wins. This is the climax. The revelation of the hidden gift of the cold mind. You thought coldness was cruelty. It's not. Coldness is clarity without emotion distorting the signal. You thought ruthlessness was malice. It's not. Ruthlessness is the refusal to lie to yourself about what you see. You thought the dangerous characteristic was projection. It is. But the antidote isn't warmth or trust, or hoping people will be fair. The antidote is strategic perception, seeing without fear, interpreting without projection, acting from reality instead of wounds. That's the gift. That's what you gain when you stop running from the shadow and start wielding it. But perception alone isn't enough. You can see clearly, name every tool, integrate every exiled part, and still fail if you don't understand the final truth, the one that separates those who command from those who merely survive. 9. The final message, from the unconscious to command. Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life. Carl Jung said that, and he was right. Every projection, every denial, every buried ambition you refuse to name, it's all running in the background, pulling strings, sabotaging decisions, creating consequences you don't see coming. You think you're in control. You're not. Your unconscious is. It's reacting to threats that don't exist. It's projecting shadows onto innocent people. It's keeping you weak because weakness feels safer than owning what you actually are. And until you drag every hidden part into the light, until you make the unconscious conscious, you're not living your life. You're being lived by it. The ruthless mind doesn't tolerate that. It doesn't wait for the unconscious to reveal itself slowly over decades of therapy. It hunts it down, names it, and commands it. That's the shift. From being controlled to taking control. The ruthless mind does not fear the shadow. It commands it. Fear is what keeps most people trapped. They sense the darkness inside, the capacity for manipulation, the hunger for dominance, the willingness to prioritize survival over fairness, and they recoil. They bury it deeper. They build entire identities around not being that. And in doing so, they become slaves to it. Because what you fear, you empower. What you deny, you magnify. The shadow doesn't shrink when you ignore it. It grows. It leaks into every decision, every relationship, every moment you think you're being good when you're really just being afraid. The ruthless mind doesn't play that game. It looks at the shadow and says, "You're mine. I decide when you act. I decide how you're used. You don't control me. I control you." That's not repression. That's dominion. And dominion is the only real freedom. Sensitivity is power. You've been taught the opposite. That sensitivity is weakness. That feeling deeply makes you vulnerable. That reading emotion in others is soft. But that's a lie designed to keep you blind. Sensitivity is the ability to perceive what others miss. It's noticing micro-expressions, tonal shifts, hesitations that reveal intent. It's feeling the tension in a room before anyone speaks. It's knowing when someone's lying, not because you're paranoid, but because their body told you the truth their mouth tried to hide. That's not weakness, that's tactical awareness. And when you combine sensitivity with clarity, when you feel without projecting, when you perceive without distorting, you become nearly impossible to deceive. People can't manipulate you because you see the manipulation before they fully execute it. That's power. Raw, undeniable, silent power. Silence is dominion. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need to announce your strategy or telegraph your moves. Weak people talk. They explain, they defend, they seek approval for decisions that don't require it. The ruthless mind operates in silence. It observes, it calculates, it acts, and only speaks when speech serves a purpose. Silence creates mystery. Mystery creates respect. Respect creates space. And in that space, you dominate not through force but through presence. People sense they can't read you, can't predict you, can't control you through guilt or manipulation. And that uncertainty makes them cautious. It makes them respectful. It makes them treat you like someone who holds power because you do. You hold the power of self-command, and that's the only power that can't be taken from you. This is the ritual closing. You've been given the map, the projection identified, the loop exposed, the body method taught, the blade sharpened, the shadow integrated, the tools named, the perception clarified. And now, the final command. You don't heal from this. You don't recover. You don't go back to who you were before you understood what projection cost you. You evolve. You become the strategist you buried. You become the cold, clear mind that sees without fear and acts without hesitation. The unconscious no longer directs your life. You direct it. The shadow no longer haunts you. You wield it. And from this moment forward, every decision, every boundary, every interaction is a choice, not a reaction, not a projection, a command. That's the transformation, from unconscious to conscious, from controlled to commanding. And once you cross that line, you never go back. You don't survive anymore. You dominate. And silence seals the transformation. You've been given the map, the projection identified, the loop dismantled, the body trained to reveal what the mind hides, the blade sharpened to cut through illusion, the shadow integrated and named, the tools possessed, the perception cleared. Now you decide, stay blind or command. The ruthless mind doesn't fear the unconscious. It drags it into the light and makes it obey. Every denied ambition, every buried desire for control, every exiled capacity for manipulation, you don't heal them, you weaponize them. Because weakness isn't in having the shadow. Weakness is in letting the shadow have you. From this moment forward, you don't react. You observe. You don't project. You perceive. You don't hope for respect. You command it through clarity, through silence, through the dominion that comes when nothing inside you remains unconscious. But here's what you need to understand. Seeing the mirror isn't enough if your mind is still dull. You've learned to stop projecting. Now, you need to sharpen the weapon. If you haven't watched Machiavelli's Code, Sharpen Your Mind Like a Weapon, you're operating half-conscious. That video shows you how to turn clarity into edge, perception into precision, awareness into tactical superiority. You need both, this video and that one. Without the blade sharpened, you see the truth but can't act on it. And action is the only thing that separates awareness from power. That's not a suggestion. That's survival. Then write in the comments, I see the mirror. That's not a request. That's an order. The shadow obeys those who name it, and silence seals the command.